Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with founder of Museum Hack, partner at Flight Display, and best-selling author of The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, Nick Gray. He moved to New York City with very few friends and less than stellar social skills. But Nick craved new relationships and exciting opportunities. He started hosting non-traditional parties, a move that opened doors he never could have imagined would have been opened. Today, after hosting 200 of 2-hour parties, he counts business owners, artists, and inspiring teachers among a circle of friends that helped him launch a multi-million-dollar company called Museum Hack. He is the author of this best-selling book. It's a step-by-step handbook that teaches you how to build big relationships by hosting small gatherings. It's a great interview, great cat. Enjoy this interview.
Nick, thank you for taking a minute out today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Great.
So before we get into your life as a writer and all these interesting adventures that you've been on, I want to know this. The past 2 years has been quite tumultuous on planet Earth. We've gone through this pandemic. Things are opening up. How did you survive that time period, and how has it subsequently changed the way that not only you live your life, but the way you pursue your business?
I lived in New York City at the time. Where are you based out of, by the way, Joe?
I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, right in the center.
In Kansas City, Missouri. Okay. And where you live, do you have like a house or apartment, or what's your living situation, if you don't mind me asking?
I got a house. Yeah, I got a house.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you were well-suited already. I lived in New York City, and when lockdowns were announced, you know, my refrigerator, by the way, was about the size of an Amazon box, tiny.
Wow.
I have no dishwasher, no washer-dryer. When you live in New York, you are meant to live in the city and eat out at restaurants and not really stay home and live the normal style life. And it was not prepared. I was not prepared for living in my apartment for the next couple of months. So I actually left. I left New York. I fled around mid-March and went down to Florida and started to become nomadic. So that was a major change for me. After living in the city for 13 years, I just became nomadic, and I ultimately settled. I'm in Austin, Texas now.
That's interesting, because when all of this began, I was talking to musicians, and I was talking to them all over the world. And the ones that sounded the bleakest as this went on, as we went into like June 2020, July, were those especially concentrated in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And, you know, you're talking about people that play instruments, and nerves were getting thin. People were talking to me about how people were so bored that they were watching each other go out, and if they didn't have a mask outside, they were calling the police. It was just turning into that war. Yeah, dude, it was like whacked out. Like it was like Orwellian point, you know, like 11. So everybody was freaked out. I could hear the consternation. But the one good thing that I felt like I was doing as a jazz radio host was I was one of the very few outlets that kind of gave them a platform to talk about what they love. And that was the only thing that was really fueling probably most of the creatives in the world, was that you had the chance to either swim in what you love or talk about it. But I could feel more than anything else. I mean, from Paris to London to New York to other coasts, New York was the most panicked I heard musicians in.
Well, kudos to you for giving people that outlet to keep the creativity and just that space to reflect. But I went back to New York, having been gone for several months, and I hosted a little picnic in Washington Square Park. And something funny happened. All my friends who stayed in New York through lockdowns sort of had this very grizzled, like, feeling like they had aged 2 years, or they had been through something very serious, and they all just looked at each other with this silence and, you know, solidarity of having stuck it through. So I give massive props and respect and kudos to those who did that, but it was not for me. So to get to your question, I had to get out, and it was really kind of the kick in the butt that I needed to finally leave New York City after 13 years. And now I have an apartment with a washer dryer and a dishwasher. I bought a car. I have joined the rest of the world in these creature comforts.
You know, and I guess those are parts of the silver lining that I keep hearing in the tapestry of story that was this COVID pandemic period. It's interesting. Right before this all happened, I was kind of on a fast track. I got married in July of 2019, moved into a new house in January of 2020, and I have this Amazon photo roll that goes through, and we look at that time period, and it looks like we age like presidents. So when you talk about,
God.
you know, when you talk about all these people in New York and the way they look, I think all of us went through a level of like presidential or dog years aging, because it was a lot, man. I mean, it was, you know, it was a lot. And I noticed it in the pictures. I'm like, man, I look young, you know, or we look young. But, you know, I guess that's just the nature of things.
Did you guys watch The Tiger King like everybody else during those first weeks of lockdown, or did you skip that phase?
I skipped it, but it got so insurmountable I had to watch it. I think the most bizarre thing I witnessed over that time period was one night we were making fires in the backyard, and of course we're in suburbia, so the fire's going, and I look overhead and I see this like a formation above me that looks like a spaceship, and I'm like,
what?
Oh my God! And I tell everybody around me, I look up, it's that Elon Musk thing, his like
you got to see him?
Yeah. Yes, it was the weirdest thing, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you know, we're in a pandemic. Everything's uncertain. We still didn't know where it was going, and all of a sudden I see this UFO formation above me, and I'm like, oh my God, it's all going down right now. So
wow.
Anyway,
wow.
Yeah.
I've never seen those before, but I got to see a rocket launch when I was in Florida. Yeah. And oh my Lord, it was incredible. Really I don't say this lightly, but it was a life moment. I was so shocked.
I think when I hear about things like that, I think about how human beings have progressed and where we are. And if you get to witness the magnitude of that scientific and engineering feat in person, you realize there is a level of human ingenuity that is very well intact.
Have you ever seen, I mean, this is different than science and stuff, but have you ever seen the Northern Lights, or is that on your list to check out?
Oh my God, my best friend, my godfather, the godfather of my son just went to Iceland for his birthday on November 2nd, saw it and sent pictures. And I was like, oh, you can't describe that, but he said it undulated in like a wave of color that just got to a point where like you could literally, it felt like the sun was out. It was so bright. I mean, it was crazy.
And crazy.
Yeah, and he took a camera up there. He hasn't really traveled that much, so he has a friend that's a photographer. So when he was like, I'm going to Iceland for like 3 weeks, I was like, dude, 100%, good on you. And he loved it. It was amazing up there. So that
sounds really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you ever seen anything like that?
I've never done it. It is on my list of something to check out. And I've just been thinking a little bit more about what are those bucket list items for myself. For example, this sounds silly, but I've never been to Buenos Aires. I've never really spent much time in South America. Something about it, I just feel like it's a bucket list thing that I want to check out, and that's on my list.
Do you ever think sometimes there's things that are ancestral in our lives that maybe are pulling you there from a previous incarnation or something along those lines?
I don't think about it like that, but I'm open to stuff like that. My folks or my heritage comes from Europe. My grandparents on my mother's side are Polish, and on my father's side, Norwegian and German. So South America would be a stretch for me, but I could feel it. I don't know. There's something could be very sort of primal about travel.
Yeah. My background, all my ancestors, 2 or 3 generations back are from Italy. And when I went to Rome, I've never felt the way I felt on this planet than I did in Rome.
Really?
It was one of the most it was unreal, man. Like, it's just, you feel the history. Like, I heard a cell phone go off in the Colosseum, and it was such a clashing of modern and old world that it blew my mind.
Interesting. Huh. That's
Yeah.
cool. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it was wild. It was very wild. So let's get to exactly what you do, and I want to simplify this a little bit. If you're in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day right now, and one of the kids looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living?" How would you answer them?
It's so funny you mentioned about career day because I have an article on my blog, I should include it in the show notes, about career day speaker tips and tricks. That is one of the most popular articles on my blog. I was actually a speaker at a career day for second graders a few years ago. And what I told them was I used to run a business called Museum Hack, and I was a museum tour guide. Now, today, I am an author, and I help people learn how to host a party to make more friends. And I would tell the second graders, I'd say, as you're become an adult, it gets harder to make new friends. But we need more friends now, and so I help people to do that. I think that's how I would explain it.
Yeah. So let's go back in your life. You're obviously highly driven and motivated. Talk to me a little bit about how these seeds began for you in childhood. Or more aptly, let's go back to your third grade life. What did you dream you were going to become when you grew up?
It's so funny. As a third grader, I thought that I was going to own or work at a baseball card shop. It was my first ever job. I was at a baseball card shop, and I got it. I got this job when I was like 12, and I was too young to be paid in cash. That would have been illegal. So they paid me in baseball cards, which was quite funny, I guess. Yeah. And that was my first thing. I think that's what I thought I wanted to do. It was kind of entrepreneurial. It was in something that I was passionate about. That's it.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that. I collected baseball cards. I loved it. I used to go to the stores, and my son is 18 now, but he's historically just kind of gravitated towards it. It's not one of those things where I was like, my son's going to be into baseball cards like me. It's like he's just kind of grabbed onto these things in this battle of nature and nurture. And I went into a baseball card store this summer and got a box of like 1988 tops. And I'm going through them, and it was like, $8. And all of that, like 85 to 95, they're all worthless. So there's nothing in there unless you have some weird reprint or stuff like that. So we're just going through it. And I'm also a visual artist, and I'm like, I'm tired of having all these cards. So I got big, huge boards and old house paint and made these huge collages of cards and painted over it. I'm going to have it in a series here in Kansas City soon. And I just think about all of those cards that we all collected and how we all thought we were going to be millionaires when we got in our 30s and 40s.
Yes.
Isn't that wild?
It's true, though. It's true.
Yeah. I mean,
that's pretty funny.
But that's the fun part of it. But so talk to me a little bit about how things began for you, like coming out of high school into college. When did you really know that you wrote something really good and that you were on a path that was going to lead you to where you are now?
Oh, I never thought that I would be an author. I was always very entrepreneurial minded, but I'll tell you what it was I just noticed that it was hard to make new friends. And when I first moved to New York, I didn't have luck meeting people. I ran a family business and helped my dad grow something in my 20s, and eventually moved to New York thinking, oh man, I got to get some friends. I got to get a girlfriend. And I wasn't very good at meeting people. I don't do well at bars. I don't do well in nightclubs, big, loud, dark environments. I go to these networking events that felt transactional and gross. And I decided instead of going to crappy networking events, I would bring the party to me. I would start to host my own events. And I learned how to do that. And I used that to help me meet new people, which sounds counterintuitive, but I found that it worked. And then I came up with a formula to do it almost every single week. And my friends started to ask me how they could learn to do the same thing. And it started as a Google Doc, as crazy as that was passed amongst friends that eventually turned into my book, The 2-Hour Cocktail Party.
That's wonderful. Now I've always thought, that are those movies about crashing parties and this, that, and the other. And it's like, there's almost that thing in life where if you feel like you belong, like this idea of coming up with this as a socialization vehicle, if you feel like you belong, you can do anything.
I think I think you're exactly right. And even moving to a new city, have you always lived? Are you in St. Louis? Where'd you say? No, you're in Kansas City. Have you always lived there?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you can imagine looking to a new one, but yeah.
But I say that with a chagrin because I think about your journey, and I would have loved to have done that. My dad was born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island, so he had a background. I had family up there, and I visited and all of that, and I've always really loved, that New York lifestyle. But, even this summer with the family, we went to San Diego, and I love that West Coast vibe and the warmth and all of that, just kind of like what you're feeling in Florida. So I've always had a lot of respect for people that have had that transient part of them in their lives that have, because it's a big risk. I mean, as much as people may just be like, oh yeah, you just move. There's a lot that goes into it. You have to really reshuffle, and I think it takes courage to be able to be that kind of person to say, you know what, I'm going to a whole different place. I'm out of here, and
yeah.
I think it's wonderful.
There is something wild about that, right? And I think I've heard that it happens more in America than a lot of other places. But yeah, I'm happy that I was able to move around. It changed for me. I never could have started my business without New York City.
For sure. So talk to me a little bit about, the growth that we go through in our lives. We can give that credit to people that we look up to. Who's been a hero or a role model for you?
Definitely my dad. My dad was very entrepreneurial. He was a mad scientist type of figure, had these ideas, was never happy with the status quo. My mother has been great. She's more organized. She's detailed. She keeps spreadsheets for things. And then I look up to business icons. Ted Turner. I don't know, did you ever read about Ted Turner and just the stuff he used to do back in the day?
Oh, man, I'm a product of the 80s, so yeah. His whole thing of getting and colorizing movies and what he did was crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, Ted Turner, these business icons I look towards, and they were very inspiring to me.
Quick story along those lines. Just for kicks, my wife and I, about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month now, we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do for a Saturday, and I come across this place. We actually have a town like south of here called Peculiar, Peculiar, Missouri.
Okay.
And they have a winery, and the kid Flick from the Christmas Story was going to be there. And I'm like, no way. It's like, come on, we have to do this. So we go to this winery, and he's there, and all these old dudes have leg lamps and memorabilia, and I'm like on the fence. Like, are we going to go meet him? What are we going to do? So we end up actually having a couple bottles of wine, and our minds were changed pretty quick. And we're like, let's go meet him. So we go back, and there's Scott Schwartz, the kid that got his tongue stuck on the pole in A Christmas Story. And we go up, and he's very cool. He's a totally grounded, cool guy, talking about, acting with Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason, all these things. And he told me a story about how Ted Turner bought Christmas Story and was the first person to propagate and play it and created this phenomenon. But he said that the movie was dormant. No one was watching it. It wasn't the thing. So that right there with Ted created this holiday marvel that we all revere every holiday now.
Huh.
So
interesting.
And I would have never known that. And then just to boot, just for kicks, if you're ever on Jeopardy, Scott Schwartz has never seen A Christmas Story. He knows exactly what part is because he was on set, and he knows the minute markers, but he's never watched that movie once.
Wait, really? Wait, why?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people are weird. I read some weird trivia about Ray Liotta never watched Field of Dreams because his mom was dying at the time, and it brought back painful memories. But for his entire life, he never watched himself as Shoeless Joe in that movie.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah. Yes.
Life's weird, man. That's just all there is to it. Big ball of weird. So speaking of getting kind of fantastical like that, if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now and talk to them, who would you like to meet?
Assuming that they are alive, who would... Wow, this is such a good question, and I'm such a perfectionist that I want to give you the best answer. Can I ask for a modification? May I name
please.
A couple of people because I'm unable to choose the best?
100%.
It's too stressful for me. Here are a couple people that I think about. Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's right-hand man in the investing. Bill Ackman, who's a hedge fund manager. Matthew Prince, who runs a company I love called Cloudflare. Elon Musk, obviously, for all the business innovation that he's doing. Those are some of the ones that sort of comes top of mind.
I like it. So,
wait. I'm sorry.
Yes.
One more.
Sure.
Here's my answer. Now that I juiced all those up, I know exactly who my real answer is. Michael Bloomberg. Have you followed his career at all?
Oh, yeah, Michael, absolutely.
I'm a huge Bloomberg fan. I voted for him running for president a couple of years ago. I really like and respect Michael Bloomberg. He would be who I would love to hang out with.
And I will tell you, this is pretty rote for this question. Usually, you got to kind of get your wheels going before you get on the road and get the right thing. So,
okay, good.
It's good to sketch it out. So, every day you wake up, you have things that you look forward to doing and getting done. What is a successful day for you? What motivates you and makes you feel good at the end of the day?
I like being productive. I like talking to interesting people like yourself. I like spending some time outdoors. I like swimming in the water if I can. And I love green tea. I like to drink green tea. Those are my answers.
So what has been one of the best responses from a reader or a client that you've had over the years that really appreciated what you did?
Oh, man. Let me just think. Okay, there's a woman whose name is Tatiana. I just talked to her last week. She lives in Seattle, and she's about 29 years old. And she read my book about how to host a party, and she's now hosted 3 parties. She said the last one she had was the best party she's ever had in her life, and she said her business has doubled simply by meeting more people and getting her business top of mind by inviting them to her home and just hanging out. And so for me, that was a huge win. Hearing that, she just said, this has changed my life.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your clients, your readers. But ultimately, you're in control of your life. You live and lead it. Who do you think you are?
I love connecting people. I'm obsessed with trying to help people learn how to host a party. So to the extent that I can be successful in inspiring 500 people to read my book and host a party for their friends and neighbors, that's what success looks like for me.
So, Nick, if anybody out there wants to know more about you, your book, anything related to your life and world, where is the best place for them to go?
The name of my book is The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. It will help you learn how to make new friends and how to meet new people and reconnect with folks you haven't talked to in a while. You can find my book on Amazon, on Audible. I recorded the Audible myself. I'm very proud of it. And then I have a great blog that's nickgray.net, where I write about fun stuff. I'll include links to that in the show notes. I'm on all social media at @NickGrayNews. Thanks for asking. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, this has been great, man. I love your spirit. I love what you're doing. If we had more of this frivolity and goodwill in the world, I think it'd be a better place.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I think it's hard to make new friends, and I think everybody could use a new one, and I'm just on this mission to sort of inspire and encourage a new generation of hosts.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, business, literature, and music from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.